Today we're going to start chapter 5, and this is a very short lesson. Normally I do lesson 1 and 2 together, but we're going to keep them separate this year. So these are just properties of inequalities. So we're moving away from things that are equal to inequalities, and we're finally going to be introduced to the transitive property. Now, if you're studying with a tutor, transitive property is actually something you don't have to have inequality for. But for this textbook, we only use transitive property when we have inequalities. So again, inequality is this greater than or less than symbol. And what transitive property does is they both have a letter in common, or a segment in common, or an angle in common. They have something in common. So like here they both have angle B in common. So if A is greater than B and B is greater than C, so A is greater than C. Now this is kind of like substitution, but when it's an inequality, we call it transitive property. So we can do this with segments. AB is greater than BC, and BC is greater than CD. So then, since these two are in common and the symbols are both greater than, AB is greater than CD. Now, the only time this becomes tricky is when they give you one inequality and one equals. So if they give you AB is greater than BC, but then they give you and AB is equal to XY. So then XY is greater than BC. Now this is completely different. Since one's an inequality and one is an equals, what we're doing is we're taking this out and we are replacing it. So this is a substitution property. So, rule of thumb, if they're both inequalities, then it's going to be transitive. If one is an equality and one is an equals, then it's going to be a substitution. Now, a property that most people think is quite silly, of course, there are three possibilities. If you're given two values, you have three possibilities, right? A could be greater than B, A could be equal to B, and A could be less than B. Thinking back, I think there's only one or two problems in your entire book that deal with this. And there's a homework problem where they took a bunch of stuff about when the first number is greater, and then when they're equal, and they're like, and what's the third possibility? And they're talking about this property. We do not use this very often at all. Okay, transitive we do use, and the substitution we use quite a bit. And for the addition property, it's just like addition property with the equal sign. So when we had AB equals BC, and then, if you add 5 to the left, then you can add 5 to the right. You can add the same thing to both sides. Addition property. Guys, this is exactly the same, except for now we have an inequality symbol. So, same difference, same name. And we're going to go through these, which, again, they're the same thing as we did before, except for now the symbol is an inequality, but it's the same thing, right? So we know from before, let's not use A. We did like, whatever I'm going to use is going to be equal. So let's use letters. XY is equal to AB. And what did we do if we were subtracting? So if we had this, then we subtracted the same thing on both sides. So minus 2 equals AB minus 2. So as you guys understand, I'm not going to do this for all of them. You just put an inequality, and that's the only difference. So why is C never equal to 0? Because if it's 0, as you guys know, and if you multiply anything by 0, it equals 0, and then inequality would be messed up. And the same, if you divide by 0, any number divided by 0 is 0. Okay, So let's look at this one. PI is greater than IG. Now there's really not a symbol for, like, if something is greater than, if they were equal, we would put the equal signs, like congruent symbols. But this side is greater. This side is smaller, according to my given. And then GI is greater than PG. So this one is the smallest, even though it's not to scale. What can you conclude? All right, easy. They both share this, so they like cancel out. We're left with PI is greater than PG, and this is the transitive property. Next, PI is greater than PG, PI, PG. Okay, so we have the greater side and the smaller side. And as we talked about before, if you have something that is equal, right, we can take this out and replace it with PG. So PI is equal to PG, and this is not the transitive property. This is substitution. All right, and moving on, just a little bit more here, and we're going to be finished with this first lesson, short and sweet. The addition theorem of inequality. All right, now when we did this before, we just called this addition property. And to be honest with you guys, I just still call it the addition property. I can't think of a time that we call it this on any of your assignments, but let me explain it to you. So early on, we had questions like x equals y and a equals b, and then we had x plus a equals y plus b, and that was the addition property. So we can add these two together, and we can add these two together. Hopefully you remember those. Okay, so now the only difference is we have inequalities, right? So we take these first two, we add them together. You take the second two, and you add them together. And again, this is something we don't use very often. It's in the lesson, so I'm presenting it to you. All right, whole greater than part theorem, which obviously the whole has to be greater than a part. All right, so this is betweenness of rays theorem. Angle 1 plus angle 2 equals angle ABC. Okay, so if we know that, then what it's saying is the entire angle, ABC, has to be more than just one of the little angles, like angle 1. And ABC has to be more than just this little angle 2. Common sense. Okay, we'll just say that. It's common sense, and we'll just leave it there. All right, this was not my favorite lesson. It seems very common sense to me. If you have any questions, please send me a message on Canvas, and I'm happy to help you anytime.